Block number 2 for the month of August is the shadow cable. And when you're working the shadow cable, you can see that there are some cables in here, but because we don't have the pearl background like we did on the interlocking lattice, they don't stand out quite as much. And that's why we refer to them as a shadow cable. But we are going to take this fantastic knitted fabric and we are going to gather and cross stitches in it so that we get those cables that travel all over the fabric that you can just barely see. And this is another one that you can use in either direction in your blanket. It will look good right side up or upside down. So when you do this one, what we're going to do is we're going to have 4 stitches. And this time we are going to be changing the position of those 4 stitches. And they're all knit stitches. So what we're going to do is we'll just pass stitches right or left, however our cable says. And our cable is actually a cable for right. So for those at home, it'll cross this way. For me, it'll cross this way. And what will happen is we're just going to take those stitches and switch their position and then knit all 4 stitches just like we normally would. And all it does is it gathers the fabric. And I really, really love cables. I told you earlier that I love cables, but I think that cables are a fantastic way to add some texture to your knitting. So let me go ahead and look at the pattern for our shadow cable block. So it says we're going to cast on 36 stitches. And the reason we have to cast on a few more stitches than we have been is because these cables actually take width away from our fabric. Because if you think about it, they are drawing the fabric together. So we have to make sure that we account for that and add a few extra stitches into our cast on count. Then we're going to use color 503 Gift, but again, I am actually using the Carlton DK and I am using that slate gray again. So you don't have to use the exact same color or yarn that I have recommended in the pattern. Just use whatever works for you, and again, make sure that you are getting the same size of block or square each time you knit it. So we're going to follow that chart and we're going to repeat the stitches between the red lines or the stars 4 times and then repeat the entire chart 4.5 times before we bind off. So that half time means that we're going to knit, because there's 8 rows, we're going to knit rows 1, 2, 3, 4 again, but not 5 through 8 for that last repeat. So that's a really easy repeat. It should be something that's very intuitive as you start on it. I'm going to go ahead and cast on those 36 stitches, work the first 2 rows, and then I'll have you join me for row 3 again so I can show you how that cable works. So now we're ready for row 3, which is the pattern row. So we are going to slip 1, knit 1, work the cable, and then knit 4 more stitches. So here we are, we slip 1, knit 1, and now we have to do a 2 over 2 cable, and we need to cross it to the right. So what we're going to do is just take those first 2 stitches and we slip them to the back, then we knit 2, and then we knit 2 off the cable needle. But what I'm going to do is take those 2 stitches and put them on my needle. I'm going to hold those first 2 stitches at the base, and then I'm going to slip them off my needle and then use the needle tip to pick those 2 stitches up again. So I've now swapped their place. Then go ahead and move those 2 stitches back to the left hand needle and then just knit all 4 of those stitches. So there you can see how those stitches have moved. You can see it's 2 stitches have swapped places with the other 2 stitches. So 4 total stitches were involved in that cable. So I'm going to go ahead and knit 4 more stitches. And then it's time to do that cable again. So what I'm going to do is take that needle tip, since we're ready for that cable again, I'm just going to take that needle tip, I'm going to insert it under stitches 3 and 4. I'm going to grip the base of stitches 1 and 2, and then just use my needle tip to slip them back on the left-hand needle. And all we've done is swap the position of those stitches. That's all it is. So you can see we're ready to go ahead and just knit those 4 stitches. And once I have knit those 4 stitches, I will check my pattern repeat, and I need to knit 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll just knit those stitches, and then we will be ready for the next pattern repeat. So we're going to do that cable again. We need to insert that needle tip under stitches 3 and 4. You grip the base of all of your stitches, move stitches 1 and 2 onto the needle, and then 3 and 4. Then you just go ahead and knit all 4 of those stitches again, and then complete your pattern repeat with 4 more stitches. So now we are back to that cable again, and we'll just swap the position of those 4 stitches. Then just go ahead and knit all of your stitches. And remember that we're making that shadow cable fabric, which is why we are knitting all of the stitches between the cables as well, because that will help the stitches to meld a little more. It kind of hides those stitches. And remember, when we finish out this row, we're going to knit 2 more stitches. So you can see just the beginnings of those shadow cables. And I'm going to go ahead and work a full repeat, and then I will be back with you to show you what it looks like. So now that I have worked the first full repeat of the chart, you can just start to see those cables as they are working across that block and what they look like in the full block again. And hopefully you have enjoyed learning about cables and trying out some cables. There will be more cables in our future. But this month we worked on that interlocking lattice and our shadow cable blocks. So we played with both a purl base and a stockinette base for our cables. I hope that you've had a lot of fun with these blocks. I told you several times throughout this series that I really love the cables and I really love what they do on a fabric like that. So I will see you next month where we continue our exploration and we learn some new skills yet again. So see you in September.